yeah, you're not just getting $40 for an ebook, like you're getting a customer for life. And that customer might buy 5 to 10 more products from you over the course of, the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Like you'll be alive longer than the internet has been around.
We're so excited to announce that Gumroad is going to be running creator challenges moving forward, and we're going to start our first one on Monday. So our first challenge is going to be the 14-day product challenge, and in 14 days you're going to learn how to pick your topic, build a landing page for your product, you're going to learn how to create it, and eventually you're going to launch it. You're going to receive daily emails with instructions, action items, resources, and you're going to receive exclusive access to the Gumroad Circle community that we just started, which is only available to the creators that go through the 14-day product. So it's highly worth signing up even to get access to the Circle community. And at the end of the challenge, you're going to receive the entire mini ebook product guide, so you can keep that resource forever.
Awesome.
Do you have any announcements, Sahil, you wanted to share?
Do I have any announcements? No, really. We're hard at work on memberships, which is going to be the next big thing that we launch, hopefully in November. And the next product feature update that goes live is descriptions for products files. So you'll be able to add descriptions to your files pretty soon. And that will work on all that mobile apps as well as the website. So pretty excited about that. There's going to be more. I think the product pages are going to get a lot crazier in the next year. So that's just the start.
Yeah, that sounds great. I definitely need that for my own product. Awesome. So should we open it up to Q&A?
Yeah, let's do it. I also can screen share a bunch of random things that people might be curious about. But yeah, I'd love to answer any questions people have too.
Awesome. So it looks like we have our first question already. Do you have plans to publish a store, like a web app where users can browse through available books, music, or other products?
Yeah, so there is something that we call Gumroad Discover, which we launched a couple of years ago, at least. So if you just go to gumroad.com/discover, but it's like maybe responsible for 5% of our volume total. So it's still small. It's sort of like an auxiliary. Like if you sell on Gumroad, we might boost your content a little bit and you'll make a little bit more money. And we kind of promote Discover in certain places. But next year, we'll probably make a much larger push at it. So that Discover will like sort of, the goal is over time, people will build affiliation with Gumroad and feel like they can come to Gumroad directly and discover creators and products and things like that. But it's a big project. So yeah, it's forthcoming. But yeah, today you can go to gumroad.com and sort of discover content. I think the big issue with it is, it's because there's just so many different types of things. It's much easier to build a marketplace if there's like one thing that people are looking for, right? Like sound packs or like WordPress blog templates or something. So I think the big question for us is like, can we build something that's almost like Amazonian, where it's like allows you to have a bunch of different variety in the products that get sold.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I've definitely noticed I get a lot of sales from Gumroad Discover. So it's definitely really beneficial for creators.
I like to call it free money.
That's very true. Okay, so it looks like we have a question from YouTube next. What is the right amount to spend on Facebook and Instagram ads to drive traffic and sales to a Gumroad product, such as an ebook or course?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends. I mean, I would definitely say, you should not start with ads. Like you should make sure, I think, that the product you made is creating value for your audience that is already kind of loyal to you and trusts you and you have a relationship with. And maybe even broader than that, you can like post it on Reddit and different communities and make sure that it's useful for them and converting well. Like to me, ads is kind of like the last thing that you want to do to once you really feel like you have product market fit and your product is really valuable, then you can start sort of like optimizing how much money you're spending on ads. But like once it works, it can scale really well, right? Like you only have so many people in your audience. You might have so many people in the communities that you might be a part of, but really ads can reach millions and millions and millions of people. So I think ads are kind of the last, but also potentially the largest if you can figure it out, because you can potentially, if you can spend $10 and make 50, you can effectively do that forever. And really scale your business that way. So we have creators who are spending thousands of dollars a month on Facebook ads, for example, but they're making, more than that back. So it makes sense for them to do that. But it does, it's the biggest difference is you're now spending money, right? So you only want to make sure that you're spending your own money. I think if you sort of have a good idea that you're going to make it back, and you can start small. You can start at like $3 a day or something, and build up from there as well.
Yeah, I love that. I'm actually still at the stage where I haven't ran any ads myself. I'm still just selling to my audience, which has worked really well for me so far.
Yeah, it's a very different business model, and it's it's much easier to do what you're doing and then go to the ads one than sort of start with that. And like I just think people can do it, but it's much riskier. It would be like launching a Kickstarter without any network of your own. Like possible, and you could do it. People do it with Facebook ads and YouTube ads, and but it's very hard. I think and it's much less in your control. I think that way as well.
Definitely. I think it's good to always start small, like you said as well, and kind of see what works, experiment with ads, but definitely start with your audience and your community building first.
Yeah, I always ask creators, if they're that interested. I'm always like, why not sell to the people who know you best? And part of it is just like people are uncomfortable, right? Like it's sort of like you have this relationship with these people, and you're now like, give me money. That's weird. But I don't know. Like to me, that's like I don't know. I like the idea that I can actually give money to the people I support, and I don't have to. They don't have to make money from people that they don't. Ads and other things that are less direct, I think that is also changing. Like it's becoming much more socially acceptable with Kickstarter and Gumroad and GoFundMe and like all of these different ways to ask for money in like a nice, pleasant way.
Great answer. It's very true. Okay, so our next question, how can we optimize SEO for our stores?
Yeah, I mean, the one liner here is if you optimize your store for humans, you'll optimize for SEO, because ultimately Google, and I don't believe I'm smarter than Google. Like I think Google is going to outsmart me. And so I'm always like, look, like as long as you make your page clear to a stranger human being who comes onto your page somehow and is like, gets well informed about your product and is able to make a good decision about what it is and how valuable it is and whether to purchase it or not. Like generally those things are rewarded by Google, because those are the signals that Google looks for. Google looks for like how many people click through, how long did they stay? Did they come back? Those are the signals, or at least, one of many, probably thousands of signals. And so ultimately, yeah, I think it's really about, I think things like keyword stuffing and like those hacks maybe worked like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. My guess is they probably don't work super well today, because Google is really smart about knowing what you're doing. And it's sort of a cat and mouse game, right? Where they're always I would say using Gumroad, I mean, sort of obviously talking our own book here, but using Gumroad is a great way to optimize your SEO, because you're using a platform that already has it, that's been around for a long period of time, that has hundreds of thousands of people pointing to Gumroad. We have a lot of quote unquote domain authority. But, for your product page, I think the things to focus on are, it's sort of like, it's sort of a lagging indicator of how well you're doing on other things as your SEO. Your SEO will like automatically grow and rise as you do these other things really well.
I definitely agree with that. I think SEO, it doesn't work as well as it used to anymore. And I think most importantly, you need to focus on providing value and showing your audience that you're consistently helping them with their problems, and there's, creating solutions for them. And that's way more powerful than focusing on SEO.
Yeah, one thing I would add is, you want to think more broadly than like SEO for your store, for example, because you are producing a lot of content, and the store, I mean, it's like if you imagine like the SEO for like someone's recipe book might not be great, but their SEO for their recipes might be great, and they link to their recipe book from their recipes, right? So using Gumroad posts and WordPress and other platforms that allow you to like have a newsletter and have a blog, like those are, you should be producing content for your audience on Twitter, etc. Like I've noticed that my tweets show up on Google like way more than they used to. I mean, I would never have thought Twitter would have been like SEOable. No one would consider like Twitter a way to SEO. But if you like, there are things where I'll just like Google something and my own tweet will come up, and I'm like, what? I don't even know how Google decides that. Like, what data are they?
I have actually seen a lot of your tweets on Google,
Yeah,
so I can testify. It's so true.
It's weird. I think Google like has some relationship with Twitter. I don't know, who knows, but yeah, I think that it's focusing. Like things like, for example, like people would write blog posts about like you should use an H1 tag instead of an H2 tag, right? And like the developer in me is like, yeah, that matters. Like you want nice. If anyone doesn't have CSS turned on, it looks nice. Like that mattered 10 years ago, maybe. But Google is smart enough to know like, oh, this is the font size. Like they probably just look at how big the font size is, and they don't care if you're an H1, H2, whatever else,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, great. So we have a question from Keenan. Does data show that Gumroad product pages convert better than third-party landing pages?
Yeah, we haven't run this data in a while because we just did it and it turned out to be true enough times that we're like, yeah, it's probably going to remain true. But yeah, generally a Gumroad product page is heavily optimized. It's super fast. The biggest downside to using a Gumroad product page is the lack of customizability, which we'll fix next year. So that's the one thing you miss out on. But generally, in terms of like how fast it is to get through and things like that, conversion is pretty high. We'll make it even higher when we add Apple Pay by the end of the year, and other payment methods on top of that over time as well. But it's pretty good. Like it's unlikely to be the bottleneck to you making sales. Generally, it's pretty fast. It's performant. We spend a lot. It's internationalized. So if you are visiting from France and you have a French browser, like it's going to show it in French, etc. So on those things, we're pretty. I think we've invested in that. Whereas if you're building your own website, you can use the Gumroad overlay. So that's our way of sort of hoping that you get the best of both worlds. You get the customizability on your side, and you get the Gumroad sort of performance on our side. But you do lose, like, you don't have a team of people who've been working on your page for years trying to make it better and better and better. Like things like making mobile responsive, or like all these things like are things that you'd have to think about if you're doing it yourself, which are, might not be worth like the 1% or 0.1% or whatever optimization that you might get out of it. So yeah, that's but again, I'm biased, right? So
no, there's something definitely to be said about also taking out the first of all, creating convenience for the creators on Gumroad, because it's very quick to get a landing page on Gumroad up. That was the first thing I did before I even started working on a book. I was like, got to get the landing page up, and work from there with pre-sales is also really important. And then also there's a lot of studies that taking the clicks away from your users and taking away the decisions helps them make a purchase. And Gumroad makes it, you're a very quick purchase. You're, 1 to 2 clicks, you're done. And if you're having them go through a long landing page, that can sometimes, they change their mind. The most important thing is converting that, checkout and getting that sale.
Yeah, and there's some value sometimes to those super long landing pages with all, like there's data that shows that can work for certain types of products. So over time, we'll allow people, I presume, to allow, to create these more elaborate things and have testimonials in line. And like we'll support that. But what I think will happen is we'll have like a default, which is like what you currently see or something close to it. And then you'll have options, or you'll have a way to add things above and below and to the right and left that will kind of allow you to do more. Because if you're selling something for like $3,000, which isn't the perfect, like Gumroad is typically not used for things like that. Then, sort of the approach might be a little different. But for the types of things that most people use Gumroad for, ebooks, courses, videos, etc., up to the hundreds of dollars ish, like that, yeah, I think our page works really well. And the other thing I would say is like the conversion, the funnel actually starts way before Gumroad, right? Like a lot of people like if Daniel Fasalo tweets a book, like there's a good chunk of people who are going to click the link, hit I want this, hit pay.
I sure did.
You're kind of, and that's the goal, right? The goal is to build a relationship with your audience and drive so much value, and the price is it's sort of so easy that like a huge chunk of your audience is like, yeah, cool, yeah, awesome, yeah, it's totally going to be worth whatever it is, right? I mean, and we see this in the numbers. Like we see this when a product launches, where like there's no way that these group of people like actually, like we had a product go live the other day that had 36,000 sale. It was a 0+ product, so a lot of them are sort of for free, but 36,000 downloads and or sales in 5 hours. There's 1,440 minutes per day, so I don't know what the math is on that, but you're seeing a purchase every few seconds or something like that, right? And this person has just built an audience and that really trusts him, and when he had a new product, it was like easy, and so it's important, same with SEO, like not to over focus on like the micro optimizations here. Like the goal is to build an audience and to like provide value and become really competent so that people want to pay you for what you have to offer.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think don't focus on SEO, don't focus on tiny little things, whether you need like the landing page versus the Gumroad page. Focus on building an audience. That was definitely the most beneficial thing that I could do. Highly recommend it. All right, so we have another question. I do a lot of writing, so I'm thinking of going with an info product first, but is there any resources that Gumroad personally recommends for product design, and what tools to use to create info products?
I'm curious on your take on this one, actually.
Yeah. So personally, I love Fiverr, and if you find someone really great on there and you kind of build that relationship, I think that has been really powerful for me as of late. I've also used other resources in the past, like Canva, when I wanted to throw up something quickly and free, because Canva is so great. They have a ton of book templates that you can use. You can use that for product covers for videos. You can really customize it. But I think if you want to save your own time and you don't have an eye for design, I think Fiverr is a great place to go for creators. And then in terms of, so I love Camtasia for creating video, but if you're working on an ebook, for instance, there's a ton of free online resources you can use and websites. The 14-day product challenge will actually go through a ton of the resources that you can use online for free for creating a book. And there's even things on your MacBook. If you have a MacBook, for instance, you can use Apple Pages to format your book. I've actually used that in the past as well. And it was really helpful and really quick.
Yeah, I think some people, including myself, like when you pick up a book in the store and you're like, I can't do this. This is insane. And then you would like realize I'm working on a traditionally published book right now. It's like Microsoft Word, and like there are tools that are available to everybody. It's like when I learned about like making a web application like Gumroad. It's just me on a laptop, like it's not using VS Code or TextMate or whatever the software might be, using Terminal. Like sometimes like you think like you need access to some crazy suite of tools. You don't even need Photoshop anymore. And this is the beauty of the internet, like where we live, like in terms of today, Canva, Figma, all of these amazing tools are effective. You could use Google Docs, totally fine. Ultimately, people are paying again for your content. Your like the sort of design layer is just is like a way to just get to that stuff. And you might be surprised at how little you need to know to like I just picked up Figma a few weeks ago, and I'm like, I switched to it completely. It's and I know people who design book covers in Figma, and like it's 100%, it's free, like and it's just a PNG or an SVG that you send. It's all pretty simple. One other thing is we did think about at some point, maybe I'll share this in the Circle community. We have some screenshots of like we built like how to build it, like make a book basically within Gumroad. So you could like create chapters and this and that. We decided not to do it, but one day I think we will. I think there will be a sort of a way to just create pages and have files almost live within the pages. And like, my guess is like, it's still early days and like what it means to sell products on the internet, what the internet even looks like. And so, stay tuned for like a world in which you can create your cover on Gumroad. You can just do everything within, or you can import really easily from other platforms, etc.
I would love that. I think part of being a creator is when you haven't created a product yet, it's really difficult to think. Like there's a big barrier of like, oh my gosh, there's so many tools and writing a book is so hard. So I think making it easy on yourself is really important, and just taking it easy on yourself as well. I've bought products that were just a Google Doc or, just a GitHub repo. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated at first.
Yeah, you can always, you can always invest, like Facebook ads. You can always invest in more and more and making things better. And someone told me this, I forgot what he was referring to, but they said people actually like the early adopterness of, like, they're excited to be part of a platform or community, a product that is a little bit rough around the edges, like you're attracting those types of people. Those people are kind of in for, the kind of weird, you're figuring it out, but they're okay with that. And while you might be obsessed around like, oh, how are people interpreting me? And like this thing didn't come together perfectly. And like your audience is just excited. Like they're not even thinking about any of that stuff anyway,
That's very true. Okay, so we have a question from YouTube. Can you throw some light on what kind of products can be built in the 14-day challenge starting Monday? Yeah, I can definitely throw some light on that. For instance, Daniel Vassallo created his Twitter course in 16 hours, and that grossed over $80,000 a few months ago. I think now it's up to even $100,000. So it can be done, and you have 2 weeks. You can also we're going to go walk through creating a video course and an ebook and how you can do that easily and quickly. And if you don't feel confident at the end selling that product online, you can also release it for free on Gumroad, just to help build your email list, or you can pay as you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be something you sell for $25, $30. It can be a smaller product you sell for $10. I think the key is keeping the topics small and keeping your scope small, and not trying to go, write a 100-page book in 2 weeks. Maybe you're going to write a 20 to 30-page book, or maybe you're going to film 20 to 25-minute video course, for instance.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. I think, there's roughly 3 types of content that you can create: things you can watch, things you can read, and things you can listen to: videos, audio, and documents or books, ebooks. So, I pick the one. Maybe you can do all 3, right? Like you can come up with a concept that you want to teach, and you can create one, audio file, one video file, and one PDF.
I love that.
But yeah, I think I always think of things like a rectangle, or like the sort of, there's like depth of the topic, and there's like how wide you can go, and like a book, like a 300-page book, is sort of like really big, right? It's like pretty wide, but also pretty deep on a bunch of the stuff. But then there are things that are like, I would say Daniel Vassallo's Twitter course is like more like thin but very deep. And I think the thin and very deep are in general better fits for this kind of thing. It's also typically easier to build an audience this way, because people want, if they're people that want, I think Philip, who's also on our team, did a phenomenal job with this, right? Where he basically picked like software developers, engineers, and writing, and like the sort of combination of those 2 interests gives you a very deep focus, and it makes it a lot easier to attract the type of people who are interested in that, because you're basically saying this isn't for most people. So for the people that it is for, they're much more likely to be like, oh, cool, finally, it's a book. I don't want to buy that book on software development. I didn't want to buy that book on writing, but like specifically writing for software developers, for example, right? There's like ways to make yourself more interesting. And I think people fear limiting their audience sometimes. But ultimately, like I've found that it's better to limit your audience and really feel like you can target them well. It's like, hey, I've made a movie for everybody. No one's going to watch it, right? Disney doesn't make movies for everybody, but they're the number one movie making company in the world. So I think it's important to kind of figure out your quote unquote your niche, your demographic, and go deep, like figure out what they really want, and try to answer it for them in one specific thing. And then time boxing, like saying, the 14 days is phenomenal because you're going to hit publish at the end of it. It could be free, it could be paid, but like the goal is to feel comfortable being done, because I think when you don't have that, I mean, you can, Gumroad still, I feel like, like still like pre-launch in my, quality, like we can make it so much better, and we will. But we needed to get it live, and it creates value for people, even though it might not be perfect in your eyes. Right. So.
That's very true. Well, I love Gumroad, but it also created a lot of value for me this year with my book. So it's been incredible for me. And I think it's very true that if you just get that first initial product out there, kind of the barrier and all the blockers in your head, they're gone because you have created something online. And then, potentially your life has changed.
Yeah. And sometimes like you could spend all of this time trying to make the perfect book, but often if you release a book, you're going to know, like very quickly, you're going to get enough feedback and enough insight that you're going to be able to get to your perfect book like way faster, because instead of reading a billion articles and like spending all this time trying to do research and your audience will tell you like, this is what I want from you next. And then you're like, oh, cool. I can, like, my next book, I'll just answer all those questions. And it would be the equivalent of like trying to write a perfect draft really slowly, methodically. No, you don't do that. You write like a okay first draft. You get all the way through. Maybe it has some typos. You try to clean that stuff up, but then you send it to some folks and they give you some feedback, and that's the way to get better. And so you just can almost think of each product like a draft. And just because it's a draft, like I love the word beta, right? Like in software development, beta doesn't really even mean anything anymore, right? Because you can now release beta like you can pay for beta products on the internet. What does that mean? It used to mean like, it's private or for a closed group of people, or it's free, or it's buggy or whatever. But now just beta just is kind of like a social signal. So just think of that. I think it's a useful kind of like analogy. It's like, this is a beta book. You can still charge for the book. It's a draft of something, but just to make it feel like you don't have to make it perfect to get it out the door.
Yeah, it's so important just to get your product out the door more than anything.
Yeah, you're also learning, like even if you don't make a bunch of money or whatever, like you're still improving the craft, and you're improving yourself. Like you're getting better at the skills you need to get better at anyway. It would be like, I don't know, complaining that you like didn't run 10 miles if you ran 5. It's like, well, you still ran 5. Like that's still more than most people ran today. So I don't think that's it's always relative.
Definitely agree. So it looks like we have 2 questions that are very similar, right side by side. How about upsells after the initial launch? Are they on the product roadmap?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I'm super excited about the way that we tackle upsells when we tackle it. It's going to be amazing. And the reason is, so we're launching memberships. That's our big focus. And part of that is allowing people to change their tier, right? After they've subscribed to a product. Currently, you can't change your tier. You have to kind of cancel and resubscribe. And so we're going to make it possible where you can just say, hey, I want to upgrade, downgrade, etc., just like you can on other platforms. That is going to give us a lot of the back end. Like we're going to do all of the heavy lifting to enable things like upgrades for all products. So soon after that, we'll start working on what does it mean to allow people to add, to allow people to upgrade any product, not just memberships, after they've purchased it. And so, I think one of the interesting things about Gumroad is because we handle the payment and the content delivery, I think we'll be able to integrate those 2 things nicely. Whereas you can potentially once you've consumed like 3 out of 3 files, we might be able to show you, hey, there's this product that you bought for $50 has a higher tier that you'll get access to these 10 other things. And just build it in line, make it like super easy to upgrade, et cetera. So I think the conversions on that will be like pretty significant as well. So yeah, that will come after the memberships launch. It will be one of the next big product things that we work on.
That's really exciting. And there's definitely ways to do it right now, just creating a standalone extra product. I did that for myself, my book, and then I wanted to do resume reviews for some people. I just kind of made it hidden from my profile page, and then I sent an email to everyone who, bought the book saying, hey, I'm offering resume reviews as well now. Here's the link to it. So it's possible to do it like a hack around for now as well until it comes out.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be some cool stuff where you'll be able to maybe do, once we have upsells post, we can do upsells pre-purchase and cross sells, and all these things will happen over time. But again, like kind of going back to my deep and narrow thing, like Gumroad is like a deep and narrow product, so we're like slow. It takes us. We're really good at what we do, but it does. We have limited functionality, and we understand that, and we're like over time we're hoping to broaden a little bit, but keep the same level of quality and focus. And I'm hoping that like when we ship these things, they become like the industry standard way to do these things, because I think they'll be really, really well designed and thought through, et cetera.
That sounds amazing. So we have a question from Krishna next. What is the best way to build an audience? Will I be able to sell on Gumroad without a significant following on Twitter, etc.?
Yeah, I think, it doesn't have to be Twitter. I think you should pick a platform that works for you, and the type of content that works for you. There's certain people who are phenomenal at TikTok or Instagram or Reddit, or indie hackers, or different Slack communities, Discord, Twitch. I mean, there's so many, and there will be more, right? Like there are more popping up every day, and I assume the social media landscape 10 years from now is going to look quite different. TikTok, I feel like wasn't really even a thing like a couple of years ago. That seems to me like the dominant platform, or like the one that we talk about the most.
That's very true.
Yeah, like YouTube is much bigger than Twitter, for example, right? So so I think it's important to figure out what works for you, and then start producing content. Like the best way to build an audience is to give them something to consume, and to like put yourself out there and tell your story, learn things, teach people about the things that you've learned, start a blog, try things. And then you'll figure out, okay, this is the thing that works for me. This is the thing that leads to me building an audience. And the way that I like, at the rate that I like, for me, that was, Twitter primarily, but for other people, it's Instagram. We have like some of our top creators on Gumroad are Instagram creators, for example, selling like photographers selling Lightroom presets and courses and things like that. So it also depends on what vertical you consider yourself, right? Like where does your audience spend their time? My audience, so typically it's like other startup founders, like we typically waste our time on Twitter. As far as YouTube influencer, you probably spend time on YouTube, etc. So just being aware of like where, just think about like when you need an answer, where do you go? And like then you can, it should train you. And you don't have to have a huge audience. Like some of the largest creators have like hundreds of followers, but those hundreds of followers are rabid fans, right? And so it really, the follower count is not always like the best indication. We had one of the top. This is a few years ago. Wiz Khalifa was like one of the top people on Twitter. He was a top 40 account, top 10 account, something like that. And used Gumroad to sell some stuff, and it didn't honestly do that well because like he didn't, it just wasn't the right content for the right audience, and it just didn't perform as well. It did okay, but not for that scale. You would think a lot better. But then Eminem, who's also sold stuff on Gumroad through Facebook primarily, killed it. Absolutely killed it. So it just really, really depends, and like don't obsess too much over follower counts. Ultimately, that's sort of like a vanity metric, because you don't see like anything else. Like what, Twitter's not going to say this person earned this much last year, right? So just be mindful of that as well.
I've definitely found that. I mean, Gumroad's Philip, he did what, a $30,000-$40,000 launch, and he had 300 Twitter followers. Yeah. So it's definitely not about followers. It's all about engagement. And if you're providing consistent value, that's so much more important than followers.
Yeah. And what Phil did really well was he interviewed these people, right? So like often the people that you work with to produce your content will often help sort of promote the launch, because they're promoting themselves as well. So if you shouldn't do it just purely for that, but like you should be mindful of, one of the ways that podcasts often grow is they get guests, and those guests promote it, right? The biggest podcasts are often the ones that have guests. That's the guest-driven podcasts, and the guests often have larger audiences than the hosts. And then over time, the hosts build their audiences, and then they can go after larger guests, and the cycle kind of continues. And guest posts back in the day, like 10 years ago, was the primary way to build a WordPress blog, was like to get people, to do guest posts for other people, but then also to get people to do and so it's funny because in some ways that hasn't changed. It's just the medium has changed, but the sort of like the strategies are pretty similar.
Definitely found that to be true. It's all about just finding where your audience is and providing consistent value. Because if you're not providing value, you don't have credibility, and why would anyone want to buy from you? You're just, a random creator trying to sell something.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have a next question here. How can content creators stand out of the crowd? It's a good question.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to answer this without seeming like pithy or something, but like a fortune cookie. But like being yourself. Like I think being different, and I think you don't have to try to be different. I think everyone has a different voice and personality and things that they care about and favorite food that they like and blah blah blah. Like everyone has a very unique perspective. There's only one of everybody, and so I think just being okay with like putting a little bit of you don't have to put your whole self out there. I don't think anyone should do that. You'll get eviscerated and lose, like it's not a good idea, but like pick parts of yourself that you think are unique and different, and share them, like, if you wrote a book on, I don't know, cooking your favorite 10 healthy foods or whatever, and then I did the same, like we come up with very different products, like very different things we choose to write about, the way we write about it, the style, the illustrative elements, and would they be photos or not, the length, like, I don't know, there'd be so many different things. So I think people often like, it's interesting because a lot of creators think like, I don't know how to be different. And I'm like, honestly, like you could show me, I don't know, you could give me 100 paintings by 100 painters and I would be able to identify that they're all different painters, even though they're all using oil paints painting the same river. Like this, like I think people underrate like how different they really are. So it's just really not a thing. Like once you start growing your audience, you'll realize pretty quickly that like, oh, that concern you had of being different and not having an interesting perspective is frankly wrong. Like everyone does.
Yeah, it's definitely something I thought to myself. It's like, how can I write another book on, getting a new engineering job or upping your skills in engineering? It seems like it's been done before. But people want to buy something from you. They don't necessarily want to buy, some random another engineering book, but they did want to hear my opinion about it. And if I would have stopped myself and listened to the doubt, I wouldn't have written the book and it wouldn't have been a success. And I wouldn't have had so many amazing opportunities because of it. So I have those same, doubts and fears. And I think it's so important to just, move past that. And if you create a product, it's unique because you created it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's the nice thing about focusing on building an audience first is because you're starting to get that signal and that proof that what you're saying is valuable to people. You might not want to invest like dozens of hours of your time in making a book, and you might feel like I don't deserve to have a book. But once you have an audience that's like, hey, when's your book coming out? Like then all of a sudden, the gears shift in your head and you're like, oh no, I can. Like, yeah, I totally deserve to write a book. And I've found that like almost anyone with an audience, like imposter syndrome, it doesn't even come up anymore. Like I don't hear about it that often from people because all you do is you go on Twitter, you say something and a bunch of people like it and you're like, oh, cool.
Validation. Yeah. Product validation.
Yeah. Obviously there's the opposite end of that as you get overconfident or whatever, but generally I think like the best way to solve imposter syndrome is to like just pretend that just lie to yourself for a bit and then realize that like people like your stuff and you have something interesting to say, and once you get competent at certain skills and it becomes like this happens with writing, this happens with painting. People are like, how do I get motivated? Like you go to a conference, like one of the common Q&A questions is like, how do I get motivated? And no one on the on the panel ever relates to that. They're like, what? Because once you're on the other side of it, it's such a foreign idea because you have all of these people, they're paying you money for stuff. You have a huge audience that, like you realize pretty quickly that like, oh yeah, that was a kind of a weird thing to think. But yeah, of course, everyone does think it. And I don't think it's wrong to think it. I think it's good to think it. It means you're human and you have, you're humble and modest, but like ultimately you get really good, you build an audience, like you'll realize like, you don't have to worry about that so much.
Definitely agree. Like they say, motivation is a myth, and you just need to start, creating something, doing something of value. And then the success is what makes you feel motivation because you did something and you got something out there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like when you talk to professionals, it's like they get paid, they do the work, they are good at what they do. Like just the little voice in your head that says like, you don't deserve this, or you shouldn't be doing this, or like, it has there's so much evidence that that voice is wrong that it just shuts up.
I love that. Okay, so we have the next question. Any plans on allowing bank payments in Europe instead of PayPal?
Yeah, so we do plan for that. We're doing a little bit of a payments push right now. So we're allowing creators to connect PayPal directly. So that's a big change. Apple Pay will allow people to connect their own Stripe accounts directly too. Once we do those things, hopefully all by the end of the year, then we will sort of Q1, Q2 next year will allow creators in a bunch of different countries, not just Europe, but hopefully many more, to be able to get paid to their local bank accounts as well.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I think it's well, I hope it's a big project. I mean, payments, moving money around the world is not trivial. We have a small team and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm hopeful that like Q1 and Q2 next year we'll be able to solve that problem for at least those countries, of which there should be a couple dozen at least that we should be able to support.
That would be huge for Gumroad and the creators.
Yeah, and I'm optimistic that I don't know, just payments in general will get better over time. Who knows with Bitcoin, crypto, and TransferWise, like all these things. I'm hopeful that 10, 20 years from now, like humans will look back and be like, I can't believe, like there was like this was a problem. Like very strange.
Definitely. So we have a question from YouTube. What do you think about pay what you want models?
I love them. I'm a huge fan. I for a couple reasons. One, it allows you to lowers the bar for you to get started, because if you really feel like I can't do this or I don't deserve it or whatever, like you can start 0+. No one has to give you any money at all, and you might be surprised at how much people might give. Not everybody. Most people will probably give you 0, but like 1 in every 10 or 5 will give you more than $1. Like they might give you 5 or 10. And you might be surprised at like what the average is when that happens. And by the way, you can do pay what you want on a paid product too. You can do 5+, 10+, etc. And also you might be surprised, and like 1 in every 100 people might give you $100, right? Like you never really know. Everyone comes to your product like different life experience, different place in life. You don't know sometimes who's even in your audience. And when you have a product that's $10, it allows everyone to pay $10, or you make that choice. Do I want to give $10 for this? Do I want to pay for this or not? But when you have a 10+ product, all of a sudden it's like the sky is the limit potentially. You might have someone in your audience who's a billionaire who just loves your art and is like, I'll give you $200 for this. Or, it's like tipping at a restaurant, right? Obviously don't bank on that, but it happens. We see it in the data that does happen. And when you realize like, that's the equivalent of 20 customers, like when you realize like how the average can get shifted up quite quickly by very few people. And this happens in startups often. Like you'll have, Gumroad has a kind of a power law too. Like a lot of these services will. The U.S. economy probably does too, right? Like in general, you want to allow people to, what I like to call it, like, and you can do this with tiers. You don't have to use pay what you want to do this, but in general, I like to call this like the first class, second, business class, economy class tickets. Like you want the ability, no one, in my opinion, no one should pay that much money to go on a first class. Like it's insane. But some people do, right? And it's made for that. It's made for like the 0.1% who would pay whatever the highest ticket is because they don't care. They can afford it. Um, and you have some of those people in your audience and you want to be, so you might want the 10, 20, $50 thing. You might want the $300 thing. You might want the $6,000 thing. And that's another thing, Gumroad, we probably won't do for at least probably mid next year, maybe later, but at some point we will enable that. We'll allow for like personalized trainings, and we'll probably formalize like a way for folks to do things like that, because we understand that is a big part of many creators' incomes.
Yeah, I've definitely found that to be true. Even doing a sale with pay what you want is huge. When I've done that for my book, I know multiple people have done that on Gumroad. Sometimes just doing that is a nice way to show, your purchasers, your buyers that you care. And, just doing a random sale like that can be huge. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think one interesting thing about Gumroad is it's very transparent, right? So you as a creator know who your customers are. Your customers know who you are. So what that also means in this context is how much they're paying you, right? So I don't think any creator is like going through all the emails and being like, oh, this person didn't give me any money or whatever, right? the subtle idea that that's possible, I think, encourages people more than people might think to give more than they would, right? It would be like if you donated to charity. It's like, when you tip at a coffee shop, right? And like, the person behind you is kind of looking and you're like, oh.
100%.
I agree with that psychology so much, but it works, right? It works. And so, yeah, I think people will generally be surprised more than disappointed, like positively surprised more than disappointed in how much people are willing to give. When you give, the other thing, last thing is, when you give people the option, they feel so good. It's like if this sandwich was $10, but it's actually $1, but you can give as much as you want. Like, I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you $20. So I think there's that as well, right? Where I think if you allow people the freedom, they might surpass your expectations for them.
I love that. That really resonated with me, because it's very true that it's kind of a trust and value situation, and people want to, do the right thing and still provide you for your value. And, every once in a while you might get someone that doesn't, but I found that to be very rare whenever I did pay what you want.
Totally.
Great. So our next question, 2 questions, are about the 14-day product challenge. Our first question, I'm still looking for an idea for the 14-day challenge. Is it still recommended to join? And absolutely. The first day or 2 is actually going to be all about kind of looking at yourself and what you can do to provide value, and putting down different topics and rating those on whether, one, it's feasible to get that done in 2 weeks, and then also how interested you are in doing it, and if you have an audience. So that's something we're really going to go into detail in the first 2 days. And also in the Circle community, you can go and post about your idea and your potential ideas and your doubts, and other creators will be there to help you as well. We're really going to encourage, if you're participating, that you give feedback, as long as as you're receiving feedback as well. So it's going to be definitely a great place to join if you're still trying to decide what your idea is. And our next question, is there a prerequisite to have a large audience already to take part in the Gumroad challenge next week? And absolutely not. You do not have to have any audience to take part. It actually might even be more fun if you don't, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities in the 14-day challenge to build in public and to kind of build your audience that way, because you're going to be providing value with, small snippets from your own content and showing what you're building. And there's going to be a lot of, different ways to build that value and kind of audience along the way.
Yeah, I think one line I heard recently was, it was around a similar kind of community. It was like, this is an 8-week orientation to a lifelong career or something like that. And I really like that, where it's like, it's 14 days, but that's not the end. Like, that's really just the beginning of hopefully like a long journey for the people who participate. I remember we did something along the same lines at a much smaller scale in 2014 or something, called Small Product Lab. And I still see creators from that, just pop up on my Twitter feed and stuff, who's got started there, were like asking a lot of these same questions, who are now making hundreds of thousands of dollars doing what they love, because it's been 6 years, and it takes time to compound your audience and your income and things like that. But it's so yeah, people, I think, don't feel like you have to like start somewhere and get somewhere else. Like, you really should think of it, I think, like the beginning of something that, this circle community and things, like, it's not going to go away. It's not like we're going to delete 14 when it starts, right? So I think, take it seriously, but also don't get too caught up, I think, in like this. You need to be somewhere and get somewhere. Like, I always like, I've never been like the top of the class in anything I've ever done. I like being the most improved. That's my goal, is to like get to improve the most. And the easiest way to improve the most is to be terrible at the beginning. I would say that it's like, try to focus on your growth. Don't focus on where you currently are.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think last year, I had no book whatsoever. And now I have, 2 books, the published one and my Gumroad one, which is much more successful, to say the least. But, I had a barrier to get started because I didn't think I could write a book. And I kind of let that, for years, I wanted to write a book, for as long as I could remember. And I think the 14-day product challenge is going to be huge for people who have wanted to do that. And they, have those doubts and those imposter syndrome and the barrier. I think if you just get started, like you said, who knows where you're going to be in a few years. I would have never thought my book would be this successful, and I wouldn't have gotten so many opportunities if I hadn't have just, taken the jump start and written a book.
Yeah. Starting is the thing that separates most people. I think most people don't start. The beautiful thing about that is, if you do start, you're already in like a select group of people. You've like already left 90% of the competition behind, which kind of goes back to what the other person was saying. How do I stand out from the crowd? It's like, well, most of the crowd isn't standing out at all. Like, they're not doing anything. So just doing anything at all is going to get you way further. Way farther and further than you think.
So well said. That's definitely true. It's easy to be unique because most people aren't even in the competition.
Totally.
Our next question is about pricing, which is a great question. How should someone price their product?
Yeah, I'd like to hear from you on this, because I think I struggle to answer pricing related questions like this.
Yeah, I think that your buyers should walk away feeling like they got a deal, but not to the detriment of where you feel like you put in all this effort and that you didn't charge enough. So I think there's a balance between, you still feel like you're walking away and your time was worthwhile, and your buyer walks away feeling like they invested in you and they're happy with the price and they got a lot of value out of it. Something Daniel Basala has talked about is he'd rather leave a little bit of money on the table. And for me, I would have paid, $200 for his Twitter course. Easy. It's brought so much value to my life. The start of the year, I had maybe 1,000 Twitter followers. And after his course, I started getting around 8,000 to 10,000 followers a month. So I would have paid way more than he's charging. And he frequently does sales and pay what you want, for just a few dollars even. So he's providing just a tremendous amount of value, and maybe he's leaving a little money on the table. So I think there's definitely something to be said about finding the balance between leaving money on the table and, making your customers happy in a way as well.
Yeah, I think ultimately the way I think about Gumroad actually is like, there's a dichotomy between like creating value and capturing value, right? And so we want to create a bunch of value, and we want, the way we capture value is revenue, right? That's sort of like the business, and that's useful too, because we need to like pay people and build stuff, and that is not free. but we always want to be creating like, the ratio, we want to maximize that ratio, right? Where we want to be creating way more value than we actually capture, because that's really like why we exist, is we want to empower creators to make more money, so they can do whatever they want. I think similarly, I think you should figure out what that ratio is for you, and kind of do the math. Like, how much value do you think this is really adding to, the people who are buying this? Like $4,000 in value. Well, if you charge $40, like, you're giving everyone like a phenomenal deal. And then you should also, I think, another way to think about it, similar to what you're saying, I think, is like, yeah, like how much is this worth, would it be worth to me, right? How many sales do you think you'll get? 1,000. So that's like 40 grand. And like, does that make sense for you? Maybe it should be 80. So it's $80,000 for you. But you're also, the ratio is not as crazy, right? It's 50X instead of 100X. So you just have to like experiment with like different ways to think about it until like the answer ends up being the same a couple times. You're like, okay, that's probably where I should start. And you can always change it, right? It's what I've often seen people do, which I really like this model. And maybe at some point there'll be a Gumroad feature to kind of like automate this. But you start with your diehard audience. It might be, hypothetically $10, and then, once you sell 100 copies, you make it $20. And when you sell 100 more copies, you make it, or you could use a time frame or whatever way you want to think about it. You make it $50, or $100, $300. Then we have a new product. Yeah, like you start again, and you reward all those people. Like, the thing is, like, Daniel might have left some money on the table. I mean, he definitely left a lot of money on the table, even though he made a lot of money too. But what it means is, guess what? Next time he has a product, if and when, he's going to get a lot of that money. He will, and leave even more money on the table. And then, the sort of like will continue ad infinitum. So like, you just have to, I definitely agree though. Like, that it's much better to charge less and then to get someone who's like, this is so worth it that I'm going to tell other people to go buy this product, which I've done with a lot of his stuff and stuff like that. So I think you want to make it such an obviously great product, but also make it so that, you can support whatever lifestyle that you think you should have.
I could not agree more. I think that is so powerful, and you create a lifetime customer if you give away like so much value in the beginning. Like Daniel, he's created a lifetime customer out of me. I will forevermore be buying anything that he suggests or offers, and I have. So I think that's kind of a unknown, thing in pricing a little bit less than you might want to charge, or just being a little more generous, is that if you're giving away enough value, even if you're charging a little bit more than you think, but if it's still a deal for your purchaser and your buyer, then you're potentially walking away with, like you said, infinity sales forever from that customer.
Yeah, in startups we have the term of like LTV, right? And lifetime value, and so you're not just getting $40 for an ebook. Like, you're getting a customer for life, and that customer might buy 5 to 10 more products from you over the course of the next 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Like, you'll be alive longer than the internet has been around. So like, it's still early days, and so yeah, I think that's the way I think about building Gumroad. Like, we have an audience of hundreds of thousands of creators, 40,000 or 70,000 or so have like sold a product on Gumroad, et cetera. So like, we're still like building that audience, and we're still, early in terms of like getting them up the funnel. For some, we have creators who've made millions of dollars, et cetera too, but most creators are still early, and we're like, it's our job to help them get to the next stage. And we're still early in that for ourselves, where we still feel like we're giving people a great deal, and we're hopefully building lifetime customers, and we'll capture that value much more than we would in a year over 10, 20, 30, 40 years, which we hopefully will be around for.
Absolutely. We have another question from Whitney in the Q&A. Sahil mentioned on here and in the past that memberships are the next major feature thing for Gumroad. What will the difference be between Gumroad's current membership option and the one coming down the line?
Yeah, so the current one that you see is what's coming down the line. It's basically, instead of saving everything for a big thing where we're just worried that everything would break, and then there's a million things that could be the problem. We just said, and again, like we want to add value as soon as we can. So we just decided instead of waiting, we're just going to ship every little incremental thing that we can ship. And so we've shipped like dozens and dozens of features related to memberships. It used to be called subscriptions, for example. We renamed it to memberships. We added, tiers to it. We added functionality we redesigned the whole edit page. The whole onboarding experience is now different. We allow people to feature memberships on their profile. So really, like, I guess to answer the question directly, like nothing is different. Like that is what we're launching. It's just we actually haven't launched that. So don't tell anyone too many people, but it's literally like it also is like everything. Like we redesigned Gumroad almost entirely. The whole, like the two-sided edit. Like people who are maybe newer to Gumroad, around 50% of creators like signed up for Gumroad in the last like year and a half. So like a lot of people don't even know maybe what Gumroad used to look like. The majority of creators, but if you Google like Gumroad 2019 or 18 or something in Google, you'll find like how Gumroad used to look, and it's like totally different. And a lot of that is due to, we saw memberships as a really great opportunity to sort of make everything, rethink everything. But I guess also to say what other things we will add, besides like the tiers themselves. Will allow people to change their tiers. We will allow people to do partial refunds on the different things. We allow people to do, different recurring periods. So you can have like monthly or quarterly or yearly. We will allow post cancellation workflows. We have a great workflows feature. We're going to add a lot more functionality to that. We'll also probably support pre-orders as part of that. We'll soon, probably in the next couple of days, we'll allow people to opt out from the cancellation emails that they get. We'll allow memberships to be able to be paused. We'll allow a sign-up fee and also a sign-up discount, but people want kind of both of those, where they want, it's like $5 to start and then $10 a month, or $30 to start and then $5 a month. Like we'll allow for like different ways to use memberships to support like all of the different things that people want to do with them. But hopefully our goal is pretty simple, which is like we want to be the best product for selling a membership. We'll also allow you to have an a la carte product and then include it at a discount for members automatically. Like we'll make that really clean and simple and easy to manage as well. So it's gonna be awesome. And it's a big change for us. And then I would say one more thing, which is just the messaging around it, right? Like Gumroad is really known for helping people sell digital products. Primarily, that's what most people would tell you Gumroad's for. It's what's listed on our homepage, et cetera. And so we're going to revamp like all of our messaging so that people know like Gumroad is the best way for creators to earn a living on the internet, not just sell digital products. And earning a living might include other things like memberships, classes, courses, services, trainings, et cetera, over time. Maybe even a tip jar. Like who knows what that even means, in the coming years. We just want to be the best place for whatever that means.
Absolutely.
If you want a preview, by the way, you can go to gumroad.com/home, I believe, for our new homepage, and you can see again, work in progress, like everything we do, but you can see a preview of like some of the new design and look and feel that we're going for, which I think people will like a lot.
That's awesome. Yes, absolutely. Well, y'all heard it here first, so you must go check it out, and then also all the exciting announcements about memberships as well. So we're at time, a little bit over. I see one last question. Can we start the 14-day challenge a few days later? I think we can answer this quickly. Absolutely. At the end of the 14-day challenge, you're going to get the entire product guide, and you're also going to get the first 14 days in email as well. So you can kind of just start a little bit later if you need to. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the challenges. I think they're going to be a core part of onboarding new creators to Gumroad, and like just hopefully we can help not just by offering a product to creators to use that helps them, but also like gives them community, and like I think we can do a lot more. And I'm really excited to have Randall, Yash, Philip, Daniel, and all these amazing new Gumroad creators turn Gumroad coworkers of mine to make it happen.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to be here, and I'm really excited about these monthly challenges. I'm really excited about what's coming next as well in November and December for the workshops we're going to be doing, the Q&As, and as well as the product challenges. Thank you everyone for joining. It's been awesome. Any final notes, Sahil?
No, I think if people should follow us on all the respective social media challenges or channels, Twitter and everything. Our new YouTube channel is going to get really cool. Yeah, and our newsletter, which most people are already subscribed to, but we use Gumroad for it. So you just go to gumroad.com/Gumroad to find the newsletter and all that good stuff too.
Yes, that's the best way to find out first everything that's coming out. Just subscribe to gumroad.com/Gumroad.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.